Approval of the June minutes.
That last time? I think we did that.
Huh?
We did that last.
Did we?
No, you didn't.
We had the June meeting. we had.
You're actually using a special meeting to approve.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
so,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
27.
I did read them, but I can't prove them. I needed somebody to. Anyone read them?
We will worry about that at home.
For those online, Chair's looking for a motion to approve the minutes. From June.
So moved. I read them.
We just need a second as well.
Can I second?
You can.
I second. Okay, thank you guys for showing up today. Appreciate it. We have no visitors. We don't have any visitors' comments. Parks Department communication. I guess the reason we're here is the main reason I believe. So
We're still gonna have the end of the month meeting. Is it end of July?
I'm not exactly sure as of right this second. Okay, depends what happens today. So in our last meeting, we feel like the Parks Department is not taking any of our recommendations or what we are looking to do. And we have no idea why this is happening. Everything from the benches to which we were told that, that was maybe a city manager's decision not to go with the benches. And then down to our plantings, which have been not done to our liking, down to the concrete part, which was not done to how we asked. It just seems like they're doing whatever the heck they want, possibly. I don't know what the problem is. We've never had this issue before in the 20 years I've been here. So we're trying to find out where the communication breakdown is. And hopefully we can get, you can give some insight on that, maybe.
Sure. And I'll let anyone else go before y'all hear from me. If anyone else has comments, I know Dan Warner called me, but I'll just, if anyone else wants to speak, and then I'll hop in. That
Okay.
works.
Anybody else have any other comments besides what I just said?
Well, thank you. Yes, Eric, we had a conversation. And I think when we walked around, Ron and I walked around and looked at the benches, basically the condition of the existing benches and the new benches, it really hit me how much of a change the new benches have made. And I think in a negative way to our area. But I think it reflects decisions that are being overridden by which we had made in our group, which our group represents the property owners as well as the merchants and other invested people in the area. And I know you mentioned to me, Eric, that this is a advisory board, but I think the purpose of this advisory board is to steer the city in the right directions on behalf of the property owners and the business owners. And I actually did a little reading of, let's see if that comes back up there. This is the Old Town storefront. I guess let's see, put it right there. We go. This is the Old Town Store Town revitalization plan from 1978. This has been the blueprint of our district. And it's why one of the reasons it has thrived is that the authenticity of the area has been maintained. And this calls out those old park benches that we approved in our meeting a year ago about. And we're on the National Historic Register, partly because of the revitalization plan that we undertook. I just think that what's frustrating for me is looking at good intentions from this group to preserve our area's integrity are being met with indifference. And in some cases now even other decisions are being made other than what we choose. And I think at the very least, there has to be a conversation back from the city why they're not following our advice. And in that discussion, maybe we can make some convincing remarks on why our decision should be followed. But to make a decision in our board and then to come back a month or two later and say, well, they went a different way, I think that's disrespectful to our board. And I think it damages the intentions of why we get together to help preserve our area. That's how I feel. Thank you.
And I do believe that's the general consensus of the rest of the board as well, what our last meeting was. So we're just trying to.
I watched the last meeting, so
Okay.
I just want to make sure everyone,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
so too many of those things. Yes, there are changes that have happened that even I'm not aware of, right? I mean, the concrete part is a great example.
Mhm.
I understood the back, you know, I didn't know it was a 10x20 tent you all use, but 10x10 tent should have been able to fit in the front.
Mhm.
Didn't see that until I went and saw it after, you know, you mentioned it to me, and I was like, well, we obviously have lost a spot for a 10x10 tent now,
Right.
out front.
Yeah.
On plantings, I don't disagree with you. For some reason, you know, we've got some baskets down this way that have been installed, but we also got some baskets that got installed this way.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know why that is. I haven't heard back from Parks as to why they were put there. I do know that they haven't been charged to your budget, the installation and the brackets. So the baskets that have been added on Lockwood, contrary to what we talked about to the west, have not been charged to Old Webster's budget. So the city has picked those up and taken the installation cost of that. So now I do know, consistent with other city master plans, I'll get to benches, but in terms of plantings, that the city is intentionally moving towards more sustainable, meaning water and earth product sustainable baskets away from the pots. And we've talked about that. I mentioned that, but the Parks is moving that way. That doesn't mean pots are gone away. We still have pots in places. I know they're around in places. You can see them. But they are moving away from them and such along some path. I don't know, and it's a frustration that exists across the city in some regards in terms of siloing. Sorry, I looked at you all as well. The siloing of those conversations, right? There's just not a historical great understanding of what's going to be done here in City Hall necessarily by a department. So there should be in some regards, and especially your concerns have elevated that, right, to a way that Scott Davis and I have a meeting next week to really talk about this and try to understand, you know, what's going on and how are the plans being communicated.
So Scott's the
director of Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Okay.
So certainly you've heard the name Yvonne Steingruby. Yvonne is a resident here. She is in charge of the plantings and such like that, works for Scott. And so I'm sure that'll be part of that conversation as well. But, you know, trying to understand where that has happened, how the tickets have fallen apart, right? In terms of where we're putting things and understanding. In terms of benches, we can certainly look at going the other way. The city had made a decision to just move to all benches of the same type along the way. And obviously, I think I indicated that when you made the conversation about the wood benches, you know, that, you know, I can't remember what I said, but something to the effect of, hope it's metal. I was trying to forecast where I think the city was going to end up on that. But I am happy to resurface with conversations to pull benches if we want to go back to wood benches in a way, you know, and such along the way. Dan, to the point about the 1978 plan, I'll just tell you right now, no one here has ever, even Mara in our conversations, as you know, I took over the business district. It's not a living plan that the city has considered the governing plan for the district in any way in some years, right? It may be, I'm not saying it's not, but it's not been in the living, working conversations. In fact, from the elected leadership I get is, what is the business district's plan? You know, what are their plans? Because it seems to most of us in City Hall that I say this with all respect to all of you, because we all bring our own personal feelings into things, a lot of personal goals and one-off small things rather than a large strategic understanding of where we are going in a district, in all three districts and across the city. So that's some of the things I've heard. I don't disagree with, you know, Dan's feelings of how I portrayed the business district governance. I mean, you are advisory under the state statutes. I can't change that. It's fundamentally the city's decision. You're not separate. You're not a community improvement district. That is a separate board and a separate entity or a TDD. But we can improve communication. It needs to happen. Things need to get done. There are things that I don't, you know, where I communicate things and I think they've been done, and you know, that it falls on me as well, like just my own follow-up on those things. Are they being done the way that we expected or hoped? And that's just me and there too. So I'm not putting this all on Parks by any means. As the manager's office, we just sort of pass things on and expect them to get done and don't go back every day and, you know, or along the way and check on things. So I own that as well. and such. So I guess that's my way back at it. So I anticipate this meeting with Scott to really drive through some of this, like how are we going to really drill down on the wheres and the what's and the hows, the details of things. I also will say there will be still times probably that the council or the city may want to go in a different direction. And, you know, I can commit that we can certainly have conversations. We're going to do that before we affect those decisions. I think benches were one that caught me off guard that you guys were going to go to wood. I didn't know that was such a thing. So I think.
I do think some of the frustration also comes from board members who have been on this board for as long as they have been. And this has never happened. This is all new. Every time we've ever voted, it has gone through. We've never had any pushback. And so this has been a shock that it's been so many one after another. And I think a lot of us are on this board based on that history of us being able to make decisions and know that they actually matter. And I personally feel if this is just going to be an opinionated board, I don't know if it's worth our time if it's not really happening what we vote on.
Put a test down there, you can see the look on the outside bottom.
Sorry, I was just making sure.
And so that's where I get really confused because it seems like it's all of a sudden. It doesn't seem like it's been a gradual change. And I think a lot of people do sit on this board for the overall history of what they plan today is going to affect our district in 10 years from now. So the people that have sat on the board 10 years ago, I think what they voted on should still remain part of the plans.
So I understand that completely.
Yeah.
There is intentionality, and obviously I'm 2 years new, but I'm the new guy, right? And so I'll say there's intentionality on my part, and I've been very clear with Mara. I was like, Mara, before this month, like months ago with Mara, how did the districts run, right? Because I'll be very clear, and Fran, I'm not trying to put you in the middle of this, but Old Orchard and Crossroads, we don't seem to have this issue. And I'm not singling Old Webster out in any way. We're just in different spots. But and so
You used to before there used to be a very strong opinionated board.
no, yeah, but I'm saying
That's also
yeah,
new.
right.
Okay.
So, but I'm saying in regards to direction and such like that. And so, but Mara was very clear that yes, the city, did operate in a way where the districts really did make the decisions, right? You all as the commissions. And I, in looking at this, because there are so many different models in Missouri, when I came in, what does the law say? And so I was very intentional about making sure that I understood your role as advisory, right? And not to insinuate or give the impression that you're a governing board in a way. I mean, even changing the facade program, which is not yours, but to give a sense, for the other two districts, like, the language was it's a governing board, right? That makes decisions. And that's just simply not what the state ever created you as, right? And so I'm not trying to diminish what you're saying at all. I'm trying to say that I've been very intentional and in conversation with city leaders that we have to understand it as advisory. That does not mean, and we should have, and we need to do a better job of communicating if we have differences, but that we don't fall into the idea that there's this group that gets to make the decisions. That ultimately it is fundamentally the city's responsibility and decision that has to be put in. Now I can provide you the statutes if you all want them. If you don't need them, you don't. But either way, you are absolutely correct, and I agree with you that if decisions are going to be different, there needs to be a better respect of communication and understanding why. So I do not disagree with that statement and sentiment, and it is my pledge to you is hopefully if we're going to meet at the end of July in a couple of weeks or in August or whenever we meet again, to have a better understanding of why those decisions were made and what we can do with those decisions. But even going forward, here's how we'll communicate back and forth and make sure that we have those kind of moments of friction, potentially resolved, before they become frictionless. So.
Sorry, Dan.
Oh, sorry. So Eric, as I said in our phone call, I don't have a problem with you at all. I think you could be our advocate. You could be the person that at least represents our views in the city. I know you represent the city views as well, but you could be the advocate in that city meeting for us and say, this group, they really wanted this in that situation. They didn't want the concrete park to be as big. They didn't want the park benches to be this way. and then bring our interest in our decision to them and say, well, if you don't go with this, then we got to get back to them before we make a decision why we're not making that. I'd love to know what the decision on going with the metal benches are. They're only a couple $100 cheaper, and we pay for the benches out of our budget. So I don't understand. I mean, I'd like somebody to will have come. I wish somebody had come to us and said, here's why we're doing that. We want the city to look homogeneous. Well, we would say, well, this is a historic district. This is on the National Historic Register. This area can look different than the rest. Maybe it should look different than the rest. And the same thing goes for the other decisions that we've asked about. If you could be that advocate for us and say, well, you know, I know this group is really going to want to stand by this decision. Let's get a discussion going before we just unilaterally make a decision. I know we're not bound, but you know, in the past, our decisions have really been the decisions that we went with as a group. So we're used to being heard and acted on based on our decisions.
Our votes too. We all
Yeah.
vote on it. I mean, it is
It's a democracy. Yeah,
Yeah.
we do it in a democracy fashion, and the most votes takes the day. And then when we find out a month or two later, well, that didn't have any impact. They made the decision differently. I think that's where all of our frustration is. And I think it needs to change going forward, or we're going to lose the impact and the potential of getting people on this board, because all of us are taking time away from other activities.
So let's take, I drove around all the other business districts. They have pots all out on their, and they don't have nearly as large sidewalks as we do even. So I just don't understand the parks, going to these planters, and they also have hanging baskets as well, and I'm not a horticulturist by any means, but I'm just really, I can't grasp that a pot that's hanging up in the air that needs to be watered less than a big pot on the ground. I'm sure they're right. I'm sure they're right. And I just don't know how that, I don't understand that, but.
Yeah, so I will get the literature on that. I haven't counted
Yeah,
pots and plants in all the different places yet. I know part of the concern with pots is the amount of material that has to be put in the pots. That's not just a pile of black dirt that gets recycled every year. It's a fresh buy of commodity every year. So it's there, and what goes in those pots. And so there are factors, and Scott has explained them to me in terms of time, watering and such, and generally the hanging baskets do say water. I don't know how. I will get that literature so we can all see it.
I believe whoever says I'm not trying to call anyone a liar.
Right.
No, I'm just trying to say that the other districts, Crossroads and Old Orchard, they have the large pots.
Right.
You know what
Do we not have any large pots in Old Webster? Do they not get any out? I thought I saw some. Okay.
I mean, there could be 3 all the way down.
In
But I
front
don't
of
think they're
US
the
Bank.
large, they're like a medium pot.
There's a right in front of US Bank, and there's should be some down here, I know.
But they're not, there's 3 different size, there's different size pots.
Yeah.
None of the large ones that used to be next to our buildings, and such like that.
I
They're-
also have a problem too, and it might also be because there's a lot of people that sit on this board that are residents of Webster Roots. It makes me very uncomfortable that we're just like, oh, well, special taxing didn't pay for it, the city did. Well, somebody paid for it, we still pay for it.
Yeah, so right,
Yes,
that's true as well, right?
So it's like,
Well, no, I
I mean, that's
understand
not a
it.
good excuse. I mean, like, not calling you, it's just not a good answer to me.
Well, I think your meeting with Scott, I would like to hear what comes out of that,
Let me be honest, Rob. Let me just, if Scott's open to it, we need to have pre-meeting as staff to understand some things, but I am more than happy to either invite him or, to have you come in and sit and just talk through these things and understand how we're gonna get the plan laid out, right?
Okay.
And I will also admit that as costs rise, right, we're trying to stay within the Parks District budget for business districts so that we did this year, and I've got good news to relate on that, but that we don't overrun that in any way, because all the costs have gone up. I mean, even the per plant cost is.
Right,
so-
yeah, I mean, and again, I feel, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I feel like we're paying more and more for less and less.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, if you go drive down the business district right now, the potted plants that are hanging in, first of all, they block any 2-hour parking signs. You can't see those because the plants are growing up around them. So I don't know how we're going to enforce parking. The other issue is we have trees. No other business district has trees. So as you drive down the business, the only time you see those pots is when you're standing directly in front of the business. As you're going down, all you do is see trees on the side. All the other business districts don't do that. Now, if you go down here where they did put the hanging baskets, I think they look good and they do pop better because they have no trees down here because the sidewalks are there. And those are just things that I just don't know if people pay attention to, and so that's something, I think that meeting with Scott will be a step that we can all at least understand what's going on better because we just don't understand. And I don't want to feel like I come here and waste my time every week and people calling me, asking me what's going on, during the business hours, it's just like, I have other stuff to do as well. Just like Stacy and everyone else here, we all are trying to run businesses, do other things, have families, and it's just like, we don't want it to be so much of a burden. We're trying to make the best decisions. We always have quorums. I don't know if the other business districts always were able to show up, but I feel like we always have a quorum. Everybody participates here. Some people miss occasionally, yes, but it's just.
And it's exciting to be able to help and make those decisions. All the way down to years ago when the mayor used to come, she used to come with like all the ideas of when those reindeer were built, when those reindeers were built. She asked us our opinions, what we thought about those being in the city or being spread out around. It just felt so much more like impactful to come to.
It is.
And all of a sudden got.
Yeah, I will say that Jerry, I don't think we were gonna find anyone like her here.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She just put in full-time job here for not
For
getting
nothing.
paid, and so you're not gonna find her.
Agree.
And I don't
I
expect
agree.
Laura to do that,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't expect anybody to do that. So, but it is like Stacy said, it was always like a community and,
We made decisions together, we talked it out. And all of us, I'm for the city, obviously, I'm not against anything that happens in City Hall. But if you're gonna ask business owners to take time out of their day to give opinions and to get excited about something, those need to be used, the decisions that are. being taken.
Well, I don't disagree with your statement until used.
Yeah.
So I mean, the city has to hold,
Yeah.
there are many ideas that come here that we do not use, right? We have to hear, we have to respect decision requests and recommendations, but the matter of use, that's the point of the state law is that elected people by the city ultimately fundamentally make that decision. Now, I know some days you may think it's administration, but we're operating under at least some, and just let me finish to this point. I go back to, I think a lot of our elected officials, parking is a great example. Councilmember Smith is not on this morning. He had a tree go down. He's blocked in his house with no power. But, this came up and he, and I know he mentioned it to you, but like, we're having this conversation about parking, where do the 15-minute spots go? Do we add some more, all that kind of stuff, right? That we have an elected group here that does not believe that there is a strategic vision for one district, much less all three districts and the city at writ large in terms of where we're going. And that generally what they've heard is recommendations that sometimes are about this or then about this, you know what I mean? And I'm not putting that, saying that you've done anything wrong, but that rather they don't have, there's not a living sense of where is the goal that we're going. Is it the 10-year plan of old Webster to have a refresh on the streetscape? When is that? Those types of larger infrastructure, economic development things, that really, and I think in a lot of the elected minds, and certainly from city administration, where a lot of the business district emphasis should be, because those are fundamental things that create destination retail. Where is that in the plans, right? And it's not, these are bad things we're talking about, but much smaller issues that do affect our lives and are important are the things that rise up as the criticals rather than where's that real, what's the vision? Dan, I don't disagree with you about the historic nature of the downtown of the area in Old Webster, but obviously we've added buildings that don't meet that at all, right? I mean, you look at US Bank, it doesn't.
That was kind of one anomaly, I believe.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Issue when that happens.
Let me add to Old Webster, you guys aren't just Gore and Lockwood,
Right.
north of the tracks,
Oh,
right?
gosh, no.
South of the tracks.
Right.
I mean, you've got an industrial section that is not historical at all.
Right.
That is part of you, all the way to Rock Hill.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that the city looking at it is there is a historic core to it, absolutely, and the vibrant part that is part of those conversations, but there are other pieces. So I'm just.
I think that the city needs to get that team 4 study back out and look at it it has a lot of fantastic information in it that until Mara got here. And I love Mara, and I agree with her on most things. That was the Bible for Old Webster. And I think there was never intended to be a sunset or anything on that plan. So I really think that that is a very important document to study in detail. I mean, there was thousands and thousands of hours put into that study when that was done.
And I have read it. I'm fully aware of it. And so
Maybe City Hall needs to read it too. I mean, everybody needs to read
Well,
it.
so
What was the group that created that document originally?
It was Team 4, which is a consultant to this board at that time.
And were they paid by the taxing district? Do you know how they were paid?
Either the city or the taxing district, one or the other.
Yes.
You guys, your money is the city. I mean, I don't want
Right.
to, I mean, we are one. It's
Well,
not.
no, I'm trying to figure out if that came out of the special taxing district budget.
It could have.
It could have, it may not have been, because there was some other things going on that Joe Shepherd there was another board that has been dissolved and all that was trying to do some redevelopment in the area. And I suspect that at least part of the funding for that was paid for by that group back in the 70s when it was done.
I would
So-
make, sorry, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I would make the point though, until a new plan is developed, we go by this plan. We don't throw this plan or the details of this plan out until we all decide that, okay, things can be changed, and let's have another professional organization come in and put a different plan in place, and we vote and we agree on it. But when you're in a historic district, one of the benefits is things don't change too much over the years. We're not trying to be the newest brand new architecture and the newest shopping destination. We have strength because of our history and our authenticity. And while there might have been a building, actually, I would say the US Bank building was built before this plan went in place.
Yes, it was.
And so you've got every other building that's come in, the Novus buildings, you've got the new 2 buildings where Regions Bank is and the coffee shops going, those all have sympathies to this plan. So it's been valuable. And I think, I'm just going to throw this out. I think the concrete park has a very generic, sterile look partly because of the park benches that are there. Those park benches add no sense of history whatsoever. And our old benches are very attractive. And like I said, they're only a couple $100 more. It was not, that's just not a budget decision right there. I don't believe. And I also found out, I called the company and they make replacement slats for $114 a slat. So we could fix existing benches who might have 2 or 3 slats broken. We didn't have to get rid of benches because they had a couple slats broken. These are maintainable, not cheaply. I think $114 is expensive, but when you look at the $2,000 cost of a new bench, it's cheaper to replace 3 slats than it is to replace the entire bench, and especially when you replace it with something that looks so out of character to what our district is known as.
I appreciate that sentiment, Dan. And you have mentioned it to me, and I've looked at it personally. Take me out of City Hall. I cannot figure out why the steel benches are out of character. I mean, that's just my look at it. Just that's my own personal thought. So I understand I may be in the minority there, but to me, it's the benches. So we have very comparable garbage cans.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, they're not historic by any means, so.
No,
When I was saying use what we say, that's because we're giving 2 options to vote on most of the time. And so when we're brought 2 options and we vote between the 2 options, that's not just use what we say, that's you gave us 2 options to choose from.
Oh, we had a lot more options. That's what we had narrowed it down to.
Well, that's what I mean, but at the end of the day, it's the past few things have been 2 options.
Well, yeah, we have to narrow it down somehow, and and I'm not
Yeah.
trying to say anything. I think used is a different word. I think you want to, maybe wouldn't want to say heard.
Okay.
And you know what I'm saying? I
Well,
mean,
no,
it's
I
just, you know
actually
what I'm saying? I mean,
use
it's
that.
not,
That's
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm just trying to say that that's how I thought, you know, I think that it just are, you know, I voted for the steel benches and I'm not trying to say,
Yeah,
you know, we are a board and I'm okay with losing, you know, a
Yeah.
vote. I don't, you know, I think everyone else here voted for the wooden benches, you know, so that's just part of it. And so I think that, yeah, I think just our opinions need to be heard. And I think that Eric has already addressed a little bit that there needs to be better communication between us when it comes back and says, hey, we're not going to go that way. We're going to go with the steel. And here's why. Before we go out and buy the steel benches and they get put in, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we didn't go with your recommendation, which that's why everyone's not so happy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so, and myself included, you know, I don't want, if one person voted one way and everybody else voted one way and I voted on the majority, I would not be happy either, you know,
Yeah.
it's, right, so.
I knew when the bench decision was made, I was like, oh,
This is gonna be a problem.
this is gonna be friction, so.
Right, so, yeah.
but it's not just that one, it was everything compiled, I feel like. If it,
I would agree. Yeah, no, it is everything. It is those three different issues that we've had that we just want to address, or
So-
at least talk to.
what are we gonna do about the parking pad situation? Is it gonna be there?
Parking pad,
I mean, the pad situation by the parking lot.
the concrete park area.
Mhm.
But I can certainly go back and talk to them. I doubt, I mean. Now we've installed with a grant from another funding agency, so, you know, we'll have to look at. Can we get that, can we take it back or not, and what do we have to give back if we take it back? So. I don't know the answer for you on that one. Personally, you know, as you've asked for the Walktober Fest and Holiday Open House uses it, I'm just saying, whatever
A
uses
lot
that.
of people use it. It's not just those two. Those are the two that I'm verbally talking about.
Well, if they're using it, then they're not asking the city for permission to use it, so then we've
Yeah.
got a problem. So, because there's only two entities that ever asked to use it, two events,
Okay,
and your
on
two,
the application.
yes, so.
Stacy, at our last meeting, I think there was discussion about trying to find alternative locations.
Yep.
Have you?
The girl from Regions Bank reached out and said that she would love for it to be in her parking lot. And that's the only person that's reached out to.
And I will just add from the city's perspective, if you wanna, I mean, traffic can flow, I mean, if you want to shut down the off Lockwood entrance to the Novus ramp, that can be done. We can send them down to Allen, we can send them to the back, so I mean, as long as there's one way on and off the ramp, we can move those, we shut streets down, we do it for Jazz Fest, we do it for street dance, we can do that for those events as well. So if you want to be right there on Lockwood, we can make that happen.
We get an electrical outlet put in around there somewhere then, if we're gonna pull it onto the,
Did we have one at Rocky Park? We can certainly look at that cost, I mean,
okay.
so.
You can use, usually McCon and Burr lets you use, they have electrical right at the back of the building that you can run up.
That's where we use it for that area, but if we are going to close down that entrance into the parking lot, I feel like that cord would have to run all the way across.
I just put my 2 cents is you should never restrict access to parking. And I think this is a shame that we have to restrict access to parking because the concrete park isn't available to us.
Well, it's
I mean,
not gonna be restricted, it'll just be diverted is
Right.
what, I mean.
But we
You
do
know,
that for Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, we do that for Jazz Fest. We shut down we shut down the Allen entrance to the Novus ramp.
But
You can't get on the deck from Allen for Jazz Fest.
the primary entrance is the one there at McCon and Burr. That's the direct access
Correct.
onto.
Yep.
And it
Right.
goes straight, it goes down to the bottom from there straight. It's the perfect access. If we're winding them off of Allen in front of You Can Do and around, it's just going to be a more hassle for people to find parking.
Right. So I mean, those are the options that, I mean, we can talk about all the options. So I mean, we do this with people who have permit requests for events all the time, so.
Hey, Eric, I wanted to also say that when you pointed that out, you said, I knew when they made that decision on the metal benches that this group was going to be disappointed. That's the point right there. We could say, look, let's have another meeting with this group. And you guys, the city needs to convince us why that decision isn't going to be followed. I really strongly believe for the integrity of our decisions, there at least needs to be a discussion before it is brought against us or decisions made different than us.
I think we've discussed that, and I think that's gonna be something that
Yeah.
hopefully that is gonna change. I would hope.
Yeah, so I mean, Trey, did we send out that whole process memo that I sent to you?
There was a bunch. of stuff
Recommendation.
sent out last night at 5
Well, no,
o'clock.
not last night. This is 1 month ago.
Okay.
The council made a policy memo, here's recommendations. For how it flows up to them,
The
to the council for work session. Anyways, we'll send this out. So the council's already adopted about a month ago, a process by which boards and commissions are to send recommendations. Up,
Yes,
and then they go
we
through a
did.
staff review and such like that. I'll just tell you, there are. 5 or 6 different recommendations, not from the business districts, that are coming up that are likely to meet with city resistance. One of which is take Elm from here Lockwood up to Kirkham, give it a road diet, shut it down to 1 lane each way type of thing. So traffic advisories getting big into those recommendations. So this is not alone to this group. We are seeing recommendations come from commissions that are going to have different reactions from the city, and the council's already created a process in that regard, which I think we've sent out, but we'll make sure you get it all again. So you can see how the staff review goes through, and then conversation back with the committees, the commissions. So.
So,
Okay, go
I
ahead.
just have one question. Understand the process of like, we'll use the bench.
Yeah.
So the decision was made to use the wood benches.
Mhm.
Did that go to council or did that go to parks?
So the council doesn't act on all the individual purchases and such
Okay.
like that under the city charter.
I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
yeah,
find.
no,
which
it's
way-
so the council put money in the budget, which was in your
Right.
budget at that time for benches, right? So that goes over to the city then, and the city's plan, which has been discussed with council and Parks and Rec Commission and such, is to go to a standardized set of infrastructure equipment, right?
Yeah.
Same benches in the parks, the metal benches you see. So that your request for wood benches went to administration, consistent with what the city had decided about the standardized plan. It came back, we're putting metal. So now, I don't disagree with you, Dan. I do not disagree with you. I did, so I want to be very clear. I did represent that old Webster wants wood benches or wants to replace them. They're not even wood there, where they recycle. Yeah, composite, replace what they have. But it was, we're moving in this direction. Okay, so now I did not expect installation to happen like that it did. So, as we came back the next month, I think I said we went to metal, and I think they were already ordered by that point. I mean, it was a quick process that I did not expect. Parks orders them. There's very few things I order for the business districts that don't get shipped out to some department to handle. So.
Kind of sounds like the decision was made before we even discussed it.
Well, I think the decision at the city had been discussed and made about, overall benches and such like that, in terms of the administration, parks and rec and such. So it came, do you all want to replace the benches? Yes, and then in that meeting, I don't know if you were on, Dave, at that point, I can't remember, but it was. Yes, we want to replace the bench. I didn't expect there to be a wood bench issue coming up, and then we had that motion and such. And I think again.
And from my recollection, I think you did express that the city wants to go with metal benches. I think that was while we were voting on it, and we just said, no, we're not gonna do metal benches. We want to stay with our composite benches.
Right.
Well, that's what this board voted on.
Yeah.
So that's how
I think we need to discuss with parks or something, or city hall, or request a spot that is centrally located. That little pad was so important for the growth of a central location for people to be able to plug into and grow events at. I know that you guys don't all understand it, but literally in the entire downtown Webster area, there is not a central place that has a sidewalk big enough to
What
be able to
about-
have information tents.
What about
to-
if a parking space in front of McConney and Burr?
It's just such a temporary thing. You go to other cities and you see these areas that people can meet at, where they can put a marquee in, which we had talked about doing that. And I do feel like these concrete blocks that they put in that are not, they're not very attractive right now. They are full of weeds at the moment. Takes away from like how we want to welcome people coming into the parking garage. Welcome to Webster. And I feel like parks took that away. I would really appreciate if they could come up with a new spot for that. That has a.
I went by and looked at it with Dan, and I didn't think of other, I was hoping, I know that Frank, you mentioned that you had an idea for possibly another
Couple
area.
ideas that we need to.
Talk
Okay.
about.
Right, and so that, but I didn't really closely examine it. I'm just thinking here, brainstorming 2 seconds, maybe part of the planning, I have to go look at it, but maybe it gets taken out and put some pavers there or something like that instead. You know what I'm saying? Which is not a,
Huge cost.
not a big deal. Pavers are also good. I mean, the pavers that look in front of the new coffee shop, I was, when they started putting them down, like, that's gonna look like garbage, and I think it looks pretty good now. I mean, once they put it in.
Yeah.
And maybe, because it doesn't need to be the whole section. I don't disagree with part, our understanding what was gonna happen there, I believe, is that the back section, it's just a big concrete slab. And I commend Parks for wanting to do something a little bit different there, because there's just a big concrete slab and, but I'm sure they didn't understand how important it was to.
Well, I tried to make it clear.
You did, and
Yeah.
but they're not in this meeting.
Right.
You know what they're not here, and so they just don't,
Right.
and so that's kind of what one part of the issue or what it is, so.
The city is, so outside the specific issue of concrete park, the city is well aware that we don't have in any of the business districts, save Gazebo Park. We do not have a good civic space anywhere. This gets back to longer term strategic plan and vision right now. I don't want to bring up the Douglas Hill issues, but that was part of what was demanded from the city on Douglas Hill was if you're going to do all this and get public help, you're going to create public space that is accessible and usable, that we can have these types of events operate in, that is not a private entity. But we don't have it, and that's part of the strategic plan that we've talked about, that the city has now adopted, or will adopt, this coming week, is 2 weeks. What is that? How are we going to build those spaces? Where are they? Because we need them. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah,
You've
so
got to
they-
have those spaces,
It
but
got taken away from us.
but concrete park is not the kind of, I mean, we're talking
It
even bigger scale and scope than what
We
you.
use it a lot. I mean, it's been, it's,
No,
and
I
it
don't
has,
disagree that we
it
use
had, potential to do way more with it. But we had not had electric there, which was on the list to ask for. I actually brought it to Texine a while ago to ask for electric on that spot.
I think we need to think bigger than worry about that.
There is no places
Well,
in Webster
okay.
though.
Bigger
The
picture.
only
Yeah,
place
you know what
that
happens
you
if
still
we do it?
got,
That building requires $2 million insurance and it needs a letter from everybody.
Public space.
This is not the, they will come after you. for
would
that.
be to work something with US Bank and take over the front of their building. The plant in the sidewalk area.
Well, and up to that point, it's a great conversation because of the Rotary has just approached us, their 100th anniversary. They want to raise money for a historic antique 4-sided clock. And their idea is, and they'll come to you and talk about this, but just to give you a preface, is to put it right smack there at the intersection of Gore and Lockwood on the US Bank side. So that, the old dial clock, the antique one, so.
Eric, you mentioned there's the city is planning on adopting a strategic plan in the coming
Yes.
weeks.
Yep.
What,
I think.
what
we
is
sent
that? Is that
piece
something
out.
new or?
No, we've been, the city's been working on that for a year and a half. So I'll send the document out to you all again, so you have it. It's got, what's that? I'm sorry, okay.
Is it something
So
we as a?
it's much bigger
we
than,
as a Commission should be contemplating for this.
so you should in regard to one of the goals in there about economic development, and one of the tactics is that the city doesn't have an economic development. plan. So this, not just Old Webster, but to writ large, different impulses, different places, which we all want to respect, but what's the vision we're going towards in terms of 2 major retail areas, actually really 3 with Yorkshire, Crossroads certainly having a streetscape coming up. What's the vision and the goal? So there is a call to start an economic development plan, quite likely what you see with 10-4, but much larger in terms of the whole city, but it's going to have to include all the special taxing districts and your personal goals. So there is, in these coming 6 to 8 months, we'll start in that, and then it's really, across the next 3 years. It's a strategic plan for 3 years on where we're going. So yes, there are pieces for this group to be involved in. And I think there are values in that. I mean, BDC is talking, Stacey, BDC's conversations, but where are we going? What is it? I mean, for non-business district areas, how do they get support and help, right? I mean, all these different things, and what's the city want them to do or want to help them do and such, so.
Okay. I think everybody aired their opinions. All right, let's, so I guess decorative sign update, Tim's not here, so we don't probably have that.
Rooftop lighting I had held till the next meeting.
That's
I
fine.
just asked for the
That's
bid,
fine.
so. On holiday lighting, just briefly, you have 2 poles. This is the Rock Hill conversation we talked about on the northern edge. 2 of those poles are in the district, so the city, the Old Orchard is going to go forward with probably snowflake type of lit up signs down on their end. If you want, they're about $400 a piece, so. Or we can say we don't want to do it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I would think just 2 poles on one end of the district.
Doesn't really.
That's not.
So there are 6 poles total.
So
Sorry.
confused, for what?
This is, so there's poles on Rock Hill, and
Uh-huh.
Kirkham has come up the hill.
Yep.
At last meeting, I talked about, do you all, 2 of the 6 are in your district. They have power on them, so we can add a lit decoration. The city will look at, if you want to do the 2, we'll look at adding the other 4, so there'd be 6 total, I just. So
Like wreaths or something, or just?
wreaths, snowflakes, candy canes,
What have we done in prior years?
there's nothing. We've never done lit decorations
We
because there's
can't, we don't have.
no power. Those are the only poles you have in your district with power.
But we've always been trying to get there. So maybe we should just do it so it can
I would prefer us, let's,
wait.
To do it.
well, let's just, if it's the general consensus of this group to meet again in 2 weeks. Let's try to take a look at that area. I have not looked at it personally, but let's just drive up and just say, okay. And again, it's gonna have like some lit snowflakes. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, Old Orchard is talking about, where the banners go, you put in install a snowflake or a candy cane and it gets plugged into the pole there.
Right, and it's $400 per pole.
But it's above 400. The prices range. I'll send out the catalog link through Fran, so you can all see. I mean, they go thousands per pole if you want.
Yeah, we don't want to go thousands per pole.
And
Right.
it is a
In fact,
one-time purchase, or is it that every year? Okay, so if we start buying them, then in 10 years from now, we'll have a whole bunch.
Well, you have a 5-year.
Well,
lifespan.
the issue is, we can't get electric car to the pole. We
Yeah.
discussed that,
It's
we
just
beat
not
that,
possible.
it's not, I mean, it is possible, but it's
Long
hundreds,
term.
it's so much money. It's not possible. So, yeah, we're not gonna be able to ever move it out of that area. It's just gonna be coming up that hill, which is coming up into our business district. Mind you, that hill is not very super appealing. You come up that hill, you got railroad tracks, you're trying to, and look at everything, so. But, maybe a little bit of a something there, no different than the sculpture park. Coming up from Rock Hill, and then coming up from Gore, used to be really a dog, in my opinion. You come across Kirkham. And the sculpture park down there has made that nice, and you're coming up and you see the sculptures and the plantings. I like it a lot. So we could just look at it and kind of see. I mean, I don't see us putting I would prefer not putting a bunch of money into it, but maybe it's worth a little bit. So.
Can you identify which of the poles are usable? So we can,
All 6. So if you go essentially north of Pacific to Kirkham, so Pacific to Kirkham on Rock Hill, there's 3 on each. I think there's 3 on each side. So they all have power. So
and then are there other ones in the district or just those 6?
those are the 6 that are in proximity to your district. So
And it's the only ones that'll be able to have power. We won't be able to move it anywhere else. So, that's just what it's gonna be on. So.
Yeah, Dan, there's no possibility of power for any of the light poles on Lock Green site.
Right now.
And yeah, until they retrofit them.
And well, until
Yeah,
there's a
because they got
new
the fed line.
streetscape or something.
New-
It's only 2 wires through the poles and they're 220 and all the fixtures are 110 or whatever.
Mhm. Well, we'll decide in a couple weeks then, Ron. Is that what you want?
Yes, yeah, we'll take it, if you can, people can kind of take a look at that, and then, we'll try to make a decision at the next meeting.
Okay.
We can,
you want to hang on to all those other things until the next one? Or?
yeah, we can.
Walktober, so sidewalk curb barriers, just so I sent out the codes. Was there something you wanted to talk about specifically about that? So I know.
Sidewalk curb barrier guidelines.
Oh, I had asked for that. I requested that because I thought that maybe it was getting a little out of control with the,
Planters.
yeah.
Things in the right of way causing barriers and issues. Okay.
So I
So,
just wanted to see what the actual codes were, so I could just know that.
so the codes have been sent out, so you all have them, so.
I saw it, yeah.
And if there is an issue that, you're bumping into somebody's got something in the right of way, let us know and we can look and see if it's permitted. Many people.
Yeah. I just was curious. I mean,
Okay.
And last October special activities permit. So we're kind of, I don't know, we're still just kind of waiting, you're kind of of the opinion.
yeah, I don't know where to put the band. And honestly, this girl from Regions, she's so sweet and helpful. It kind of gives me the icks to put it right in her little drive where I'm talking about. Just because I feel like it needs, if we're gonna spend that much money on a band for the whole weekend, and it's multiple bands, it needs to be a very central location, so. And I personally haven't had the time to find a new location. Next year, I will have a lot more time. This year, I can't start from the beginning.
Right.
And replan a new event.
Sure.
I don't have time for it,
Mhm.
so, I told the trade association that I had to step off as. Being in charge of it this year, if anybody wants to step in and take it over, I would love that. But
I don't
just
think there's a clear understanding of that.
No, I said it.
No, I asked you specifically if you were not gonna do anything else. You said you couldn't move forward with a permit, but you were still moving forward with everything else.
With the holiday
So-
open house. I didn't say that with the
So
October.
if if I am not clear on that, if I misunderstood you, I'm not alone. So I don't think the trade understand.
I said,
that
I
you
need
are not-
it, I'm not gonna locate the central spot.
I understand what you're saying. I'm saying, I don't think they understand that.
Okay, so I said I'm not locating the central spot. And without the central spot, I can't fill out an application. And if I can't fill out an application, we don't have,
So the permit, if you're gonna put it on private property, so if you use, even if like US Bank, if US Bank says use our entrance between those two buildings, right off Gore and Lockwood there. That's not on. the
oh, I
permit.
agree,
Yeah,
I
so-
don't have time to do
Yeah,
that.
no, I get this.
So that's why I was saying, I don't have time to go find a place for the events, and so therefore. I can't fill out a permit until a place has been found. And I personally feel icky putting it. If somebody else wants to take it over and decide to put it on their driveway, they can. If I'm gonna put together a event that takes Webster's money, it needs to be a centrally located event, in my opinion. So that's what I said at the taxing or at the trade association. So I just assumed that people know that I'm not.
I would say no, I do
Okay.
not understand that.
So anyway, so that could be clarified in the next trade meeting, which
Yeah.
is next week, I would assume. is that
Tuesday.
right?
It is.
Okay, so that could be done. Then our next meeting, I guess we.
Well, I mean, you don't have to do anything with the permit. I mean, you
Yeah.
have all supported walked over. And so if, I just want to be clear for the trade association. If you need a street, if that's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
the city's gonna approve your permit. So we'll work out the details with you on traffic plans and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So we are not gonna withhold the permit there for that.
Right,
So-
no,
And I do, I don't I take up a whole park, I mean, permit point, but a parking space, to give beer tasting. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I just don't understand why a band couldn't go in front of McConney and Burr and do the same instead of, take a parking spot and put a 10 by 20 tent and just take up two little parking
well,
spots.
I never thought to take up parking spots. I did not even know that we were allowed to do that.
Mhm.
I do remember being in a meeting a while ago in COVID when they were talking about barricading parking spots, and that was a hard no from Mara. So that's in my mind,
Yeah, so
we're not allowed to use parking spots.
we can barricade off. parking
Okay.
spots. So if
well,
you're
that's
like in
good
front of
to know.
McCoggin and Burr
Like,
there,
that is a
those,
good-
was it 3 spaces from
I
that
had no
bump out?
idea.
Like down
It's
to,
2 spaces.
yeah, 2 spaces. I mean, we could easily, yes. So
Okay. I
if
did
that's
not
what you're
realize
asking
that.
for, we can make that
And then we
work.
could barricade
Yep.
it to protect, okay, well, that's,
Absolutely.
I mean, that makes a big difference.
And
I'm sorry, I was confused by that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, those spots have been barricaded off
Here.
many times for the Jazz Fest and such, when we had. The Masons barbecue and such,
They did that?
oh yeah, those parking spots are. It'd be just getting better, something more substantial, hopefully from the city to barricade it off.
So cars don't, since the
Yeah,
streets
I
open.
mean, I'm sorry, I'm obviously confused, because I do remember having a conversation that we were not allowed to do exercise or streets are so thin. But if you're saying we can.
Well, that might have been a more permanent installation with COVID and
Okay.
dining and moving out into parklets and things like that.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yes, yeah, but we block temporary ones open.
All right,
Yeah, for something like that, it was always
open,
open.
okay, well, that is really good to know.
I think that conversation was more in line with. When actually. When the B, I think, originally asked to block off the spots in front of.
Rather than,
Oh,
Alright.
pizza,
Pizza.
Lemke and
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
to. I think that was where that. Is, and yes, that was a very hard no.
Mhm.
We did let them take over the parking spaces behind,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes,
and.
But
and,
the
you know,
street parking was a.
Yeah.
a solid no.
Okay, I mean, thank you for clarifying that, that will actually make life much easier.
Okay, so the rest of the items, does everybody agree we can table until in 2 weeks?
Yes.
and then, Mr. Chair, at some point I hear Straub's is gonna make a request, so you're all just aware, they want to add 5. Take some 2-hour parking in the lot next to the reliable the big building, I can't, it's a reliable, yes, a reliable life. There's some 2-hour parking near the front end side of that, they're asking for more orange permit parking spaces. To convert some 2 hours to permit parking, so I told them the process, I mean, they can ask for that, it comes here for consideration, then obviously it's council's decision if they change those, but.
City owned property.
No, it's owned by the private entities, but the restrictions on the parking are required to go through the city, so.
So wait, the lot is owned by Straub's or it's owned by?
Wait.
So the reliable property ends at the sidewalk and then that's
Yeah.
actually a city street
Okay, yes,
where the 2-hour parking is.
yes.
Yeah, it's
that's-
not owned by
that's
Straub's.
the-
You're talking about on the backside.
No,
No,
the side
That's
side.
too reliable.
Rock side
Yes,
on
The
the
south side,
side.
the.
We're talking
east
west.
the drive on the east side, the park on the east side of that, well, right next to Straub's belongs to Straub's. The parking on the
Middle.
West side.
west side end is a city street. It was an old
Oh,
McClure
that's right,
Avenue,
you're right.
so that was
From behind
that's
Straub's.
city owned.
Right.
So that's the end, it's the west side, south of their middle door into the reliable building, there's some 2-hour parking there, so permits end at the middle door. Then there's 2-hour parking.
And who makes that decision?
It's ultimately the city council, whether or not they change it in ordinance, but we always bring those to you guys for conversation
And
about.
Straub's is one that wants that,
That was the request.
How
So,
many parking spots do they have?
I don't know, but I
A
use
lot.
those spots all the time,
well, that's why it comes here, because it's obviously
all the time.
2-hour parking versus,
Right, it's,
Okay.
okay. And that's gonna come to us, you know,
Yeah.
like the next.
Well, they haven't submitted it yet.
Gotcha.
They asked a question, so it may be this month, it may be next month, I don't, or maybe never, they may have heard and just said, the heck with it.
Okay.
So,
And permits,
October.
so the orange permits?
Yeah.
Do the permits run 24 hours a day or is it during business hours?
Orange parking is.
Permits are 5.
Let's do Friday,
They're till 5.
till 5.
What is
5
that? Yeah, it's generally, employee type parking where the permits come, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Permits, you still have to get the permits.
That's correct, yeah, they're
So
not
if you're
guaranteed
putting more
for,
permits into the pool, Straub's doesn't automatically get
that's
them.
correct.
Okay,
Permits are all on a first come, first serve,
so even though they ask.
there's
for
a
it, they
line
may
at the
not get it.
door for permits, when we open that up, so. We seriously are looking at that whole process, just, I'll update you on that someday, because the physical permits are Anyways, so how do we make that a better process? So.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.